You have checked their profile today, maybe more than once.
You told yourself you would stop, and you did not stop.
You have replayed the same conversation in your head so many times, you can no longer tell what actually happened and what you added later.
And the worst part is you know this is not healthy, and you cannot stop anyway. Today, we are going to tell you exactly what is happening inside your brain when this occurs. Because this is not a character flaw, this is a neurological event. And understanding it is the only thing that has ever actually helped people find their way out of it. We're going to map out exactly how this happens, step by step, so you can finally understand the actual mechanics of your own mind. Section 1, Mirrors, Not Human Beings. Let's dive right in.
The psychology of obsession reveals a pretty hard truth right out of the gate. See, obsession feels exactly like love, right? It has that same consuming intensity where literally nothing else seems to matter. But look at the difference in direction here. Love is oriented outward. It wants the other person to be free and happy, even if, that happiness doesn't involve you. Obsession, on the other hand, is oriented entirely inward, towards yourself. It's all about wanting to control and eliminate that terrifying uncertainty of loss. Because of this, obsession is almost never really about the person you're fixated on. I know that sounds wild, but it's really about what they represent to you. Safety, validation, maybe the resolution of an old wound. They become a symbol to you long before they become an actual human being, mainly because symbols can't disappoint you the way real people do.
Let's make this super concrete. Consider someone who becomes obsessed with a person they barely know and realizes on reflection that what they were really obsessed with was how that person made them feel about themselves for the first time in years. They weren't clinging to the actual person at all. They were clinging to the feeling of being lovable or worthy that the person temporarily provided. Recognizing this difference? It's your absolutely crucial first step in reclaiming your own narrative because it shifts your focus away from them and right back to what you actually need.
Moving on to Section 2, the intermittent reinforcement trap.
So how does this build into a mechanical addiction? Well, obsession isn't driven by steady, reliable affection. No, it's fueled by uncertainty. Imagine someone who receives a warm message after days of silence and feels a rush so intense it resets the entire emotional clock back to the beginning. That massive spike in relief in euphoria, that simply does not happen when someone is consistently kind to you. It only happens when you're starved of certainty and then suddenly thrown a crumb.
And that brings us to intermittent reinforcement. This unpredictability fuels obsession far more powerfully than consistent positive experiences, using the exact same mechanisms as a slot machine. It isn't the winning that creates the compulsion, it's the sheer unpredictability of when that winning will come. When validation is unpredictable, your brain dramatically increases the value it places on that attention. Those rare moments of connection become chemically significant. You pursue them compulsively because, neurologically speaking, your brain has registered them as an absolute need for survival, rather than just a pleasant interaction. Section 3, Rejection as a Threat. Now, you might assume that being rejected would naturally end the obsession, right? But counterintuitively, it actually intensifies it. Think about someone who was completely fine until the other person pulled away, and then found themselves thinking about them constantly for the first time. Why on earth does our brain do this to us? Why do we latch on harder precisely when someone signals they aren't interested in us? Here's the absolutely crucial point in this explainer. Your brain interprets social rejection exactly like physical pain. It treats social rejection as an urgent threat signal that demands your full compulsive attention to resolve. The exact same neural pathways that light up when you're physically injured light up when you are socially rejected. Your mind keeps returning to the person not because you secretly enjoy the pain, but because your brain is treating this as an unresolved, critical problem that literally threatens your safety. And ironically, the harder you try to force yourself to stop thinking about it, the more attention your brain inadvertently directs right back toward the perceived threat. It's quite the loop. All right, Section 4, the loss of self. Over time, this urgent focus reshapes your entire internal landscape. When an obsession goes on for months or even years, it slowly starts to organize your daily life. It dictates your sense of purpose. It becomes the sole manager of your emotional state. This brings us to the devastating moment when someone realizes after a long obsession that they cannot remember what they thought about or cared about before it started. You ask yourself, what do you want? What actually gets you out of bed in the morning? See, the obsession has answered those questions for so long that identity fusion occurs. The obsession organizes your sense of purpose so completely that releasing it feels deeply threatening. So the crucial takeaway here is that this identity fusion creates a massive void, making the removal of the obsession feel completely unsurvivable, even when it is causing serious, documented harm to your well-being.
Letting it go doesn't just feel like losing a person or a fleeting idea, it feels profoundly destabilizing, kind of like losing the very structure of your own mind and identity. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Reclaiming Your Own Mind. Finding the psychological way out really requires abandoning the strategies that keep us trapped. We instinctively try to fix this by telling ourselves to just stop thinking about it. But psychology tells us this is wildly ineffective. Why? Because to monitor your thoughts for the forbidden subject, your brain actually has to continuously produce a representation of that subject just to check against it. Take the example of someone who tried to force themselves not to check a profile by sheer willpower and failed every time until they started building a life that genuinely occupied them. You cannot successfully simply not think about something. You can only replace it. Recovery is the gradual construction of a life too full and too real to leave room for the obsession. The original thought loses its grip by degrees, replaced by a reality that is actually present in your life.
The intensity of what you feel is not evidence of how real it is. Sometimes the things that consume us most completely are consuming us precisely because they are unfinished. And finishing them does not always mean getting what you wanted. Sometimes it means deciding that your own mind is worth more than the answer you have been waiting for.